Okay, three, two, one. We are live. Simon, how you going, my man?
Fantastic. I'm going really well. Fantastic to see you, Adnan. It's been too long.
It's been too long, and I just wanted to get on the show and tell you that Simon TV sucks.
Oh, it totally does. Simon TV, worst podcast on the internet. No one should watch it. Oh
Yeah,
my God, it is awful. How
exactly.
does that
Yeah.
guy get
Do
away
not
with it?
watch Simon TV. Do not watch Simon TV. You have been warned.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, Sunday
Oh man.
nights. Sunday
Every
nights
time
at
I see it
8:30.
come up, I'm like, oh man, I gotta block this guy, man. The Simon TV always like in my face.
I get
The
that a
music
lot.
is good. The music is good.
Yeah, well,
The
I
music
play
is
two
good.
different types of music. So, because I go out in portrait
Yeah.
and in landscape, and on the
Yeah.
portrait platforms, I'm playing like smooth jazz and stuff like that. But I get a little bit more eclectic on the landscape.
Yeah.
Play a lot of disco and house and funk and soul and stuff
Yeah.
like that, which the crowd seems to like.
Yeah. I'm one of those fans that does your show the opposite way. I listen to the music. As soon as you start talking, I mute it.
I'm pretty sure lots of people do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just listen to the music and then mute the talking and then back to the music, you know?
Yeah, well, I've got a spin-off show where I actually spin some records called
Oh,
Sample
yeah?
Simon, where I've got like a camera doing an overhead view of my
Yeah, I've
turntables and
seen
mixer.
that. That looks really cool.
Yeah, it looks cool, right? And I sort of play some music for a little while, and it's really
Yeah.
quite funny because often more people are tuning in to listen to the music than they are to listen to me
Yeah.
to blabber on during my Simon TV shows.
Yeah. And you're good with the vinyl mixing? Can you like really, get on like
Well,
chicka chick ching?
Yeah, well, I do have my vinyl turntables there, but
Yeah.
I've been very seldom using them, that because there's quite an issue when you're mixing vinyl music with digital music. It can be really quite difficult to get the sort of the synchronization between two mixes. It's kind of a long
Yeah.
story, but the logistics, like if mixing vinyl to vinyl, yeah, sure, I mean that's how I started out. I've been doing that since I was a youngster, but adding in the digital music, which is relatively new for me. I've only been doing it for about 6 months. It's fun. It's a whole different set of capabilities. But mixing digital to digital is good. Mixing analog to analog is good. But trying to mix digital to analog, can be pretty difficult with the audio processing, desyncing. It's all kind of technical. But long story short, I try to keep them separate, either doing just digital music or just doing analog.
Yeah, awesome. That's great, man. Really good to hear, man. It's Simon TV. If you really have to, you can check it out. I think it's a great show. It's awesome. It's every week, yeah? It's every week. It's
Yeah.
a weekly show, right?
Yeah, it's a weekly show. Sunday nights. During the summer, it's at 8:30 New Zealand time, 0730 UTC. And during the
Yeah.
winter months, it's 7:30 New Zealand time, 0630 UTC. And what people like about it is because it is eclectic, it's a mixture of sort of music and conversation and analysis of politics, domestic affairs, international affairs, geopolitics, that sort of thing. But the thing is that it's interactive because people comment in the chat across 7 or 8 different social media platforms that I broadcast out onto, and their comments come up on screen, and me and my guests will respond to them. So it's iterative in that manner. The other thing is I'm regularly interviewing a whole bunch of very interesting people, some of whom are relatively prominent. So I've got I've had leaders of political parties, I've had prominent screenwriters, academics, diplomats, all sorts of people like that. And so I'm getting quite a good cross section of some very interesting thinkers appearing on the show and interacting with the audience. And I think that's something that's a little bit unique for the New Zealand, really the
Yeah.
Australasian market.
Yeah, it's a very unique style, and it works. It's a really fun. You do it. You do a really good job at, and it's quite fun to get hooked in, and you're just in, and the whole the segment moves really fast from the music to the comments to the guests that come in, the commentary you do, and the screens you bring up and the articles you read. It's really entertaining.
Oh,
It's a
good.
it's
I'm
a
glad.
really good show.
Well, I'm glad one person thinks so.
No, mean, how many people tune in every week? You said 3,000?
Yeah, well, it's over the last. It's really variable. Like it's unbelievable the peaks and troughs of it. But the average over the last 6 months has been about 3,500 live viewers, which is quite a lot of live viewers for this part of the world. You know, New Zealand is not somewhere that is very podcast friendly, as I'm sure you probably find that, you know, it's sort of slow uptake, I think, and also it's quite, you know, New Zealand affairs is quite niche. So getting about 3,500, I think, is, you know, it's great. I love having that many people, and but the issue is that sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. That, you know, there's so many comments flying by that I just don't get time in a 2 hour show to address all
Yeah.
of them. But, you know, I really like the fact that, you know, if you're someone who has something that you want to say, that I'm giving you a platform. You know, you can just be Joe Blow out there. Something's on your mind. You can come onto the show, type a comment, and before you know it, you know,
Yeah.
you're talking live on the air with other people who are interested.
Yeah, and I feel like in the age of social media and how we consume news today on X, your shows are kind of like the new mainstream shows. You know, this is where people go to get that information and listen to what's really going on. X on its own, it's a news platform, right? So if you really want to get access to what's going on X, for example, you listen to the journalists that actually do shows on X, people like yourself. So I think that is a really great way to find people and listen to people and get the news in a different way than you would at a 6 p.m. news or you know, like something as terrible as stuff, which I don't even click on those articles, right? But no, it's a great show. The other thing you do as well is video journalism, which I very much enjoy. You're always recording stuff that's going on in protests, what's happening in cities. You're obviously famous for the filming you did at the Posey Parker Park protests and event, and we know how that turned out. And your videos had 100 million views plus, I believe, on YouTube, and it's really shifted this whole satire, I guess, take on how these people lie on these headlines, and then you know we look at what you're showing and what's going on the ground, and people go, wow, this is a very much, the contrast is just like, wow, you guys are intentionally lying to the public.
You're exactly right, and that is something I was really looking forward to speaking with you about when you invited me on the show. I thought, oh yeah, that's great. That is particularly a topic that I'd like to discuss with Adnan of all people. And you're right to draw the contrast between, you know, people have over the last few years realized that the mainstream media, the vestigial media, is just flat out lying to them a lot. So what they can do is they can look at the real footage that comes from people like me who are on the ground saying, look, this is the unvarnished truth. This is the video footage that I shot. You can make up your own mind and of what you're seeing here, and then compare that, as you say, with the narrative which has been fabricated by the vested interests of the vestigial media. But what I wanted to talk to you particularly about is how short-lived that's going to be, because I'm really interested in your perspective on that, because you are right. Like people like me who do that kind of hyper-local news content are disruptive, because we disrupt the narratives by showing people the unvarnished truth. But what do you think? Because I think that's coming to the end. I don't know about you, but I've been watching a whole bunch of the AI produced videos recently. And, you know, like normally when you see AI slop, it's just nonsense. You know, it's a science fiction scene with great sort of cinematic lighting or something like that. Okay, that's one thing. It's very, very obviously AI. But then you take it to the next level and you are looking at things that look like they're drone footage or street footage from a cell phone somewhere like in the Donbass in Ukraine, and that has also been digitally manipulated. So it seems to me like, while yes, it's been great for a little while for people like me to be running around with a camera and disrupt the mainstream narratives, I'm really interested in your perspective on whether or not you think we are now in a post-truth world where you can't trust that the footage that Simon produces is the actuality anymore, because the AI is so good, you can't trust the video footage.
Yeah, I think it kind of there's two sides to this. One is, you can argue that there's going to be so much more AI content that's just going to dilute Simon's content, and people are just going to get so, I guess, exhausted from looking at all these different things, but through doom scrolling. But on the other side, I think it may drive more traffic towards you because people trust you and trust your brand and trust your integrity. And so I think we are starting to see at the same time that AI takes off, we are also starting to see a massive anti AI movement, right? Vince Gilligan's just come up with his new show, for example. It's called Pluribus. I don't know if you've watched it.
Oh
He's the
yes.
creator of Breaking Bad. And he is very much pissed off with artificial intelligence. Even the credits of his show says made by humans. And the show is all about aliens coming and hijacking the world's minds and creating a hive mind of neural minds, which is kind of similar to what Jacinda pushed in terms of, we're a team of 5 million people, it's all about kindness, but underneath it wasn't. It was a dark agenda and a movement and controlling people, right? So it's a very similar show. So I feel like we're going to see both. We're going to see a huge push for human-based content. Like I've gone totally no AI with my writing, and I'm starting to write a new TV comedy cartoon. So it's all human-written content, and yeah, it's like okay, we can use AI for little things. I know Elon's pushing this whole thing where you can turn an image into a video, right? With Grok, you can you've seen all these like lots of videos that you see that pop up, and but you also, I think, spot on that there's a lot of videos that are edited that you can't really tell whether it's real or not real, and it feels like it's real. And personally, when I see those videos, I just ignore them, and I if they're from random accounts, I don't believe in them, right? But if I'm watching Simon doing something, that's different because I know Simon and I know that Simon wouldn't give me stuff that is manipulated. And that is maintained by you doing your weekly shows. So I think what you're doing is kind of works hand in hand, right? You're in front of the camera, people see you on a weekly basis, and then you're behind the camera, you're doing a live thing on Auckland CBD, there's a protest going on. I think that brand and just being in the front of it and pushing that human narrative and doing it in a human way, I think there'll be a lot of value in that. And
Yeah, I think you've raised a good point there because it comes down to trust, right? It's like, okay,
yeah,
has Simon built up enough integrity in your own mind that you trust that what he's producing is real? But then that's a different paradigm for me because that puts me in the same position that the vestigial media has been in for a long time, that I myself have disrupted, where it's like, okay, can you trust? We can't trust the vestigial media. We know they manipulate stuff. Now, how do you know that you can trust what Simon is producing? And
yeah,
it's right. It comes down to that. The other thing is there is the temptation um, to manipulate footage, and I do this, and I should probably make this a little bit clearer that I have actually recently started doing that, and that is that, like, for my weekly podcast, what I do is I'll rant at the camera, right? But I'm one of those people who's not particularly good in front of the camera. I tend to stumble a lot, and I often I might stutter my words or something like that. And what I can do when I'm editing a clip out for subsequent publication is I can trim out where I have stuttered, but I can also adjust. I can use AI to smooth out so that the fact that cut has happened, and that there's a jump in like my facial position or my hand position or something like that is not apparent to the audience. So
yeah,
there's an ethical question there too, because this is not like I'm taking out just a stutter. It's not significant to the narrative, but in point of fact, the base actuality is that I have used AI to manipulate what actually happened from the clip. Now, why I'm personally comfortable with that is because I'm linking to the original. So you'll get like a 30-second clip of me talking about an issue, but there'll also be a link to the original as I said it at the time, if you are particularly interested. And that kind of fits my ethical boundaries of where I can get away with using AI, because I'm using it to create content which is a little bit easier for the audience to consume without actually misleading them.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the way I would describe it is that you're not manipulating the video. What you are doing is you're doing post production edit.
Yes.
You're just fixing some of the stutters and you're skipping the R's and the O's and the silences, right? What manipulating would be is you recording a video on CBD saying, illegal immigrant raping a 12-year-old on the street or beating somebody, and you're using AI to create that scene, right?
Yeah.
And then you're posting that to cause this outrage, and all of a sudden everybody hates that group of race because Simon manipulated a video and put it out there for the intention for rage baiting, right? So there's a lot of videos like that I see online, which I'm like, that's not cool. That's not good. Let's not do that, because people are doing that on purpose. And that's why now we have Elon Musk doing this whole transparency thing about users on X in terms of where their locations are. And you see all these massive mega accounts. They're not based in the US. They're in Bangkok, Bali, Brazil, Mexico. And you're like, what's going on? So that's where I think it's yes. These lines are always going to move, right? These lines are always going to move, and I think if you use AI for edits and simple things, I think that's okay. But if you're using it to really try and spread lies and fake stories, then it's going to get to a point where people are not going to be happy with that.
I agree. You raised another a really good point, and that is about the live footage. So what I've been doing for with the hyperlocal news content that I produce, as you say, like people know me from the from the Albert Park footage that hundreds of millions of people watched that. But there's been some other stuff that's been really, really prominent as well. Like I filmed a demonstration in July, and nearly, I think it's about 2.5 million people on my own social media channels have watched that clip, and millions and millions more from other people have grabbed it and published it as their own, and so on, as they do, and as things sort of filter around on the internet. But what I've sort of been able to do is to really rapidly film some footage and turn it around very, very quickly. So I typically I'm filming with my 360 camera, and I'll get whatever shots I'm going to do of the demonstration. Normally, most often it's demonstrations, but it could be anything that it's around and about. It could be, interviewing someone involved in a court case, or, something interesting that's happening in my immediate vicinity. But I can turn that around really rapidly. So from my 360 camera to an edit to publication happens within about maybe an hour to an hour and a half. And this has annoyed the hell out of the established vestigial media outlets over the last sort of 2 years, where they'll be looking to catch Golriz Garriman, for example, coming out of Auckland District Court when she's just been convicted for shoplifting, right? And I'm there as well, and all of the TV1 people, the TV3 people, all of the New Zealand Herald stuff, whoever, they all know that by the time they've edited the footage and got it to their audiences, it will essentially be a replay, because 4 or 5 hours before they manage to do that, I've already published it, and everyone who's interested in New Zealand has seen it on social media in one form or another before those established media outlets have the opportunity to put their spin on it and present it at the 6 o'clock news. Now, I think that I might change that. I think that because AI makes it AI with live footage is a lot more difficult to fake. So I think in terms of obtaining that authenticity, what I might be inclined to do when I'm filming at a demonstration is, rather than doing that with a 360 camera, I'll still do that too, but I'll also live stream from another camera. So it's like, okay, here's me, here's some other photographers that are also here. If you want, in terms of trying to to proof that this is real, doing live streams from more than one person is about as authentic as I can possibly present it to the audience. So I think I need to start doing that a bit more.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's about the next 2 years. I think it's about being original, being building a solid foundation around how do you monetize your content, how do you protect your IP, how do you protect your copyrights, being much more harsher and harder on that, and finding platforms where your content is well protected and it's very much trusted, and it's protected against people who can attack you. There's a lot of gatekeeping groyper fights going on Twitter between, especially in America, with, there's a huge division on the right. You have a group of like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and, Megyn Kelly. And then there's a group of Seth Dillon from the Babylon Bee. And then there is Matt Walsh and Laura Loomer. And they're all like fighting each other, and they're trying to control as to who is the gatekeeper and who all owns the truth. So I think I think you kind of do that with the mainstream media when they're on the street and they're editing and you're capturing. And I'm sure you're thinking about, how do I get the angles that work the best, and compared to them getting the angles that they can manipulate and hide what they want to hide. So I'm sure you're doing that at the same time. And I should also say that I think in the next 2 years, my feedback that I'm getting, a lot of people, my viewership is going up with podcasting. And in New Zealand, it's going up as well. Not as rapidly as the American one's going up. But I feel in the next 2 years, because there is so much information and misinformation on social media, I think a lot more people are going to tune into podcasts and really get to listen to two people try and break things down, like we will do today, about lots of different stories of this year, video stories and satirically real stories that people are using to manipulate things, which we will do in this show, which I'm very excited about. I feel that podcasting in the next 2 years is just going to grow. So anything human anything that we can keep very human and very authentic and very real, and try to get to the truth without compromising the truth. I think it's going to be the real winner.
Oh, I hope you're right. Because what I really like about it is, because there's always something to be learnt from conversations, and I like that. Like, I think the best Simon TV episodes are the ones where I do have a guest on. Guests normally talk to me for about 75 to 90 minutes, and really it's all about them, because that's the part that's very, very interesting. So I do hope that there is more consumption of that, because I also think it's very, very democratizing. I think it's fantastic when people who otherwise wouldn't be given a platform are afforded the opportunity to have their say. Like, there's a lot of people out there who have a really significant contribution to make to our national discourse, who simply aren't listened to. And you see this particularly in the vestigial media, where they keep going to the same voices again and again and again. And often those voices are severely misinformed. A good example is like a Susie Wiles. You remember Susie Wiles was the go-to person throughout the pandemic for comment from the media. And effectively, all she was a far left mouthpiece for the Ardern regime, using the fig leaf of a barely related scientific qualification to push Ardernist propaganda. Now, in contrast to that is something like Adnan Belushi, who is putting people on his show who aren't the go-to person for the mainstream media, but do have a worthwhile contribution to make to that particular discussion.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's about. Like, it's really about talking to people that are interesting for me. I have this genuine curiosity about people, and I'm very open-minded, and I think a lot of the people that don't want to come on my show, they've kind of canceled themselves, you know. So I'm cool with that. Um, and I do, you know, I do go through phases where I feel like mainstream media is yuck, and I don't want to have any politicians on my show, and councils are absolute fucking cunts. You know, stay away from me. You know, like I go through those phases, and then I'm like, oh, I can be much nicer today, and bring them in, and you know, open it all up, and you know, have some guests that you know you might not like, but you know, just do it for the fans, and do it for the do it for the sake of being a good journalist, and being, you know, do the media bit, and so I kind of, you know, I go through those phases, right? But yeah, it just feels like people who do the stuff that you do have access to much more better information. In the end of the day, the product that we put out is this conversation. This is our product, right? Our podcast is a media company. Our podcast is not the product. This chat is the product. So you have to bring people in who can be truthful, and they're not tied into any you know, sponsorship or money that they have to like twist the information for the benefit of someone else, and they can be as truthful as possible, and they can speak their mind, and they're not self-censoring themselves. I think that's the main kind of thing, that why these kind of shows are picking up, because that's what people want. They want to listen to people who can give them the information with no bullshit, you know, layers to it.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think one of the reasons that I appreciate your show, and also Cam Slater, I really enjoy what he's been
I
doing
love Cam
recently.
Slater.
Like with
Your
both.
episode on Cam Slater was really cool, man.
Oh, was it? Oh,
I
you enjoyed
really
it? Okay.
enjoyed that. I loved it. I mean, I love Cam. I think like, you know, if I need politics news, I go to Cam Slater, right? And I had him on my show, and he was just amazing. You know, it's like when you want to, if you want to show somebody like a good 3 hour podcast episode, and people say, "Who's doing it in New Zealand?" and who's, you know, we're not doing this. Who's our Joe Rogan in New Zealand? It's like, well, go watch that episode, because that's like high level skill in communication, entertainment, in intelligence, politics, personal stories. It was just like a beautiful chat.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well,
Yeah, it was.
what I appreciate about his format and about yours is you do have the opportunity over a long time frame, that long format, 2 to 3 hours, to really get in and dig deep into issues, and I think there is a market for that. So, you know, like I think there are a lot of people that for a show like yours and like Cam's, it's like, okay, I'm going to drive to Taupo for the weekend. What am I going to put on? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put on Adnan Belushi. He's probably got an interesting guest on. While I drive the car, I'm going to have a listen to that. Similarly, people will say, okay, you know, something that I want to, you know, nod off to in the evenings before I go to sleep, might listen to Cameron Slater, that sort of thing. And I think that is quite a different it's a different paradigm to a lot of what we're seeing on social media. Like if you look at what the
Yeah.
kids are particularly consuming on platforms like TikTok, and to a lesser degree Instagram, you know, it's very much a bite-sized kind of blip-vert approach, that if you can't say it
Yeah.
inside 30 seconds, they don't have the attention span to really pay pay to it. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is a significant side of the market for kind of, you know, slop and entertainment and so on. But for
Yeah.
anything that's a little bit more meaty, I think that the work that you and people like Cam are doing is the sort of stuff, is the kind of content that I want to consume. And I hope that you're right. I hope that more people in this part of the world realize that there is some gold there, and start consuming it in larger numbers.
Yeah. I mean, my job is to force people, if they're not interested in podcasts, and shove them in their face. That's sort of like what I do. It's, you know, and I meet people who never watch podcasts, and I interact with them. And I meet them after 6 months, and they're like, "Oh my God, I started watching podcasts because you said so." And oh man, I don't listen to music anymore. I only listen to podcasts. And I interact with them, and they're totally different people, right? There is something powerful about that format, that it works. You get your information in a different way, and it's conversational, and it works. And all of a sudden, these people have, they're more fun to hang out with. They're more nuanced. They can chat about things. They have information. They have context, and the brain is much more sharper in memorizing things and bringing recollect, relocating something that they want to share with, and reference points are much more sharper, right? And they're much more neurodiverse, and the plasticity of the brain, you can feel it, right? Like, that's kind of like how I analyze people.
Right. Right. Right.
Might be a bit intense or nerdy, but it's true. I think it works. It's like, and I always tell to people, just listen to podcasts and listen to one episode a week if you can, and whatever you like, whether it's the Joe Rogan podcast, whether you jump on the weekly show from Simon and Simon TV, or it's the Cam Slater, or it's the Diary of a CEO, or whatever you're into. Just watch a show, and it's a much more better way to consume information than through TikTok and doom scrolling, or just watching or reading mainstream media.
It's so true. It's so true, and I do
Yeah,
that
and
myself.
yeah. One thing that was very interesting about this, like, fake videos, that I just remembered, was this whole thing about Kevin Spacey going homeless.
Oh, I didn't
Did you
see
hear
that.
the story?
No.
So Kevin Spacey does this interview with some mainstream journalist, and he makes this really awkward comment about the fact that he's homeless, in the sense that he's touring around the world and he's living in hotels and Airbnb. So they take that comment and they twist it, and I think it was The Guardian, and they write this whole headline about how the whole court cases against him, for these all sexual charges, has made him homeless. So he doesn't have a home, and he's
Right.
begging and he's staying with friends. And then and everyone's like, "Oh my God, have you seen this?" And I'm like, "This doesn't sound right. I mean, where did you read this?" And then there's a video that pops up on my Twitter timeline, and it's Kevin Spacey, and he's speaking into the camera, and he's saying, "Well, there's this rumor out that I'm homeless. I just want to be clear, and don't be concerned. I'm not homeless." And I'm looking at this thing, I'm going, is this fake AI, or is this actually real Kevin Spacey speaking? And there's no way for me to verify that, you know? There has to be some way for Twitter, maybe, now I'm brainstorming, Twitter to say, well, this is actually a parody video, because we have AI that can detect that this is AI, right? So that is very scary, because you're like, well, who do I trust? Is this video, is this Kevin Spacey, or is that person right? The Guardian, because the Guardian is the Guardian, right? A lot of people trust the Guardian. So it's very interesting. All of that stuff just makes it more and more harder to navigate the truth. I mean, I'm finding with satire story that I write, it's just getting more and more difficult to find the truth and the angle to write something. Because, for example, today there's a guy that just killed some guards in Washington D.C. I don't know if you've come across the
I
story.
have.
And it, the way it rolls, it's like, it's like every 2 minutes there's like, oh, he's from Afghanistan, oh, he's an illegal terrorist, oh, he's an Islamist, let's kick out all the Islamists. And then Trump is going on, doing like a address to the nation, we will vet every single Afghani in the country. I mean, it's just amazing how it rolls, and you're like, is this the truth, or is this just how social media volcanoes erupt? It's very hard to have your thumb on the where the truth is.
It really is. And because, often, like, I read some of your satire and it's so good. It's like, oh my God, this could be real.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
and then that
It's
sort of gets added into the mix of what is conjecture, what is the reporting of truth, and then you get people trying to influence matters. So, like, I don't know if you noticed, over the last couple of days there was the video of a chap of Indian extraction, defecating on the side of the road in Adelaide. Did you see that?
I saw that. Is that real?
That is real. But what's happened subsequently is that there's a fake story that says that the
Right.
Australian Federal Police arrested the white guy who filmed the Indian guy defecating and charged him with breaching the privacy. Now, apparently that is not
That
true, but
that's good satire.
that is
That's
good
good satire.
satire, right? Because it plays into
Yeah.
people's outrage. But the problem is
Yeah.
that, like, if you are trying to determine the truth, as you say, where do you land on this stuff? Like, if you're unless you're digging and you're prepared to look for corroboration and so on, it's really difficult these days to know what is true
It
and what
is.
isn't.
It is, and I will counter your with another video that I watched of this journalist, American journalist. She's walking on the streets of Sydney, doing a film about what she's seeing, and it looks like a very Islamic kind of town, and all these men are eyeballing her. And then a police officer walks to her and says, "Can you please stop walking on these streets and, for your safety, move away from here and stop filming here?" This is not satire. This is real, but this should be satire, right? Because it's a public road. She's working in a Western country and she can, walk wherever she wants to walk. And the police officer is saying, well, and the police officer should be saying, well, I'm here to protect you. You're safe. You do whatever you want, right? Instead, he's saying, oh, this is your culturally sensitive area. You can't be doing this the way you're dressed and the way you're talking on the camera. People are not going to like it, And this was maybe 6 months ago or maybe 12 months ago. It went viral in Australia, in Sydney, I believe. But that's the sort of stuff we also see in videos where it should be satire, but it's not satire. It's actually real. It's happening. Same with the UK. Everybody, I see videos all the time. Police officers just arresting people for standing on a public road outside an abortion clinic because they're silently praying for the dead babies, or I don't know what the details are, but they're getting arrested, or they're doing a social media post. I believe this year 15,000 UK British people were arrested for social media posts, right? So yeah, I mean, it's very hard to know what's satire, what's not satire, and sometimes I have to rewrite a real story that I believe is not true, should be satire, as satire, to counter them, because people will check. People who consume news, they'll be like, okay, I'm going to go to the Chimp Chronicles, and I'm going to go to Babylon Bee, and then I'm going to go to The Onion, and I'm going to check what everybody is writing, and then I'm going to go on CNN, then I'm going to go on RT News, then I'm going to go on Stuff, then I'm going to go NZ, I'm going to go New York Post, I'm going to go to Fox, and I'm going to go MSNBC, ABC, then I'm going to quickly go on Twitter and see what Simon is saying, and then what he is saying, and then I'm quickly trying to get my head around like where the truth is and where the bends are and where the biases are, right? And that's why I started this year notthechimp.com, which is basically real stories that should be satire.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah, because then you can separate them.
Yes.
There was a story about some monkeys escaped from a truck crash, and these monkeys had all these viruses in them, COVID-19 and some other viruses, and they were being carried in a truck. The truck crashed, the monkeys ran away. And you're like, man, this should be satire. How can this be a real story, right? But it is real. It is real,
I've got to go
And
and
Jake
find
Shields, yeah, you go watch it.
I've
Do you know
got to.
Jake Shields? Do you know Jake Shields?
Jack Shields. Yes.
Jack Shields, yeah. He was on Piers Morgan yesterday.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, and he's debating that there's no way that there's no way that the Nazis killed 6 million Jews because it takes more than 10 minutes to burn a body in a concentration camp, right? And I don't know the maths, but I felt it was quite it was very satire for the way that this whole conversation goes on and the way Piers Morgan hosts the show, and you're like, what is real over here? I mean, I'm really a bit lost, I have to stop it and then go bring up Grok and talk to Grok and say, can you give me the maths around how the Nazis killed 6 million Jews, and can you give me the like the numbers and how many people they were taking in the gas chambers, and so I have to go and like stop and actually do the maths, which is very bizarre because we've gone away from this whole idea of trust, right? And we can't seem to trust people on these TV shows, and and they have such polarizing views, and they're doing it to kind of get attention and clicks and gatekeep, their biases. But then the AI, is the AI telling me the truth? AI is biased too because AI is learning from the content on the internet, right? So it's pretty messed up. It's
It
like,
really is. It really is. It's a strange time to be living through, because as you say, AIs hallucinate, and I certainly know that when I grill AI about subjects which I personally know, it is often AIs will confidently state something that I know for a fact is absolutely incorrect, and I think it trips a lot of people up, where they sort of think, because studies have shown that this happens. There's a name for it, that I can't recall, but studies have shown that people will flick through a newspaper, and if there's an article that they know personally about, they'll read it, they'll see what is wrong with it, they'll flip the page of the newspaper and read an article about a subject that they're not familiar with, but trust that what they're reading is actually true, despite the fact that they have a very recent, like within moments, experience of how the media can be very, very inaccurate. And I think this is a really big challenge, psychologically, with people, is that they put an awful lot of trust into AIs, despite having very regular proof regularly demonstrated to them that the AIs can confidently speak about things that are inaccurate. But I have to say also, when you get down to that level, it's rather macabre, where there's a disagreement on a Piers Morgan show, and you're having to run the calculation for something as macabre as, okay, how long does it take in a furnace to burn a human body? And that's
yeah,
just it's just this is
yeah,
it's a bizarre space to be
yeah.
in.
And I'm sure someone's like watching my IP somewhere, like someone's spying on me and going, "This guy's looking to burn bodies."
Yeah.
How long does it take? Remember that court case where some guy killed someone? I believe it was in America, and they released his Google search history.
Oh no, I haven't seen that. I remember Hans
You should
Reiser
check that
doing that.
out. You should check that out. The results were amazing. Like every 3 minutes, he was googling every single step of how to get rid of a dead body. You're just sitting there, I'm just watching this court video, and the I think it was the lawyer that was reading it out. It was brilliant. It was not funny, but it was funny. Like, who would do that? Why are you searching all of that specifics? But it's crazy. I mean, it's like it's got to a point now that people are having these debates that seem very believable, and people want to question things, and then you have to go and talk to AI. Wikipedia is something that nobody wants to trust because it's controlled by people that actually write what they want to write. So Elon's gone and started Grokipedia. I don't know if you've heard about this, and I believe that's probably being fed from AI, right? Yeah, it's I feel at some point we need to just pull the cord out, just cut the
Right.
cord. If we can't pull it out, we just got to cut it, you know? And I have noticed myself believing less and less of the stuff that I see on X. That's a huge shift for me. Like, I used to believe everything on X like the truth because that's what my timeline was so good. I felt like I was getting the real truth. Now I just like, nah, I'm getting off this thing. I'll engage and comment and do stuff and just keep my engagement going in the algorithm, but I just don't believe a lot of the stuff that I see anymore.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are like that, and it's almost like an acceleration, because we've had over the last, maybe particularly over the last 10 years, where we get these information bubbles, we get these search bubbles and so on, and people existing very much inside echo chambers where the algorithms of social media, or the algorithms of the search engines, plus their natural biases, keep them inside an information bubble where they only see information that promotes their pre-existing worldview, right? And when you get a whole bunch of people who are involved in that information bubble inside, say, they're people who believe that Jacinda Ardern was a great prime minister, for example. And you get them trying to communicate with people who are a little bit more grounded in reality, or who are inside their own information bubble, and there just simply isn't enough of a shared, an agreed, shared, established facts for them to be able to adequately communicate. So that's the background into which we are evolving this at an increasing pace. This post-truth reality of artificial and synthetic information which can't be corroborated. So the end
Yeah.
result is as you allude to, that it's it's a barrier to a successful communication between humans. And perhaps you are right that the only mechanism that we have available to us to actually get back to being able to have worthwhile communication and conversation
Yeah.
is to unhook ourselves from the matrix.
Yeah, I think in 5 to 6 years' time, we're not gonna have this iPhone in our hand the way it is. We're not gonna have operating systems, and we're not gonna have apps. It's just gonna be a screen, and the screen's just gonna have some kind of like a wave bubble thing that will move as an AI, and it will do whatever you want it to do, or it will do whatever it anticipates that you need, right? So I think that's where humans are just gonna get so over everything that they see on all these apps that they don't want to see it anymore, and they don't want to believe it. They don't want to engage in it anymore, right? So uh, the thing with that is, if I need to text Simon and say something to Simon, it's not coming from me. I'm telling the AI to text Simon, and the AI is then coming up with the text and giving it to you, right? And then I can give AI instructions saying, just be a little bit kind, be a little bit nice, and and this and that, and the AI will come up with it. So when you get that information, it's not from me. It's an instruction that I've given to AI, and the AI is doing something for you, right? And in the future, it's like, okay. You see all these AI videos of music. I don't know if you've seen them. There's a lot of videos about, 50 Cent in the 1950s playing his song, and AI is just magically, amazingly doing that. So in the future, we can just say, hey, Mr. AI, create a brand new Kanye West album for me today. And it will do it. It will write the entire Kanye West album, and it will give it to me, and I'll listen to it. I don't need to go to Spotify to listen to a Kanye West album. The AI will create it for me, right? Based on my choices, right? And I think that's where the cut the cord thing comes in, the plug the cord, and I want to get plugged out, is that AI is gonna just offer that on a screen, and we don't need to see anything else, and we feel like, oh man, I'm glad I don't have to go through all these things. I don't have to scroll through TikTok, and and I can talk to my phone, and I can say, give me the latest Simon TV episode, and it will pop up, right? Yeah, so I think that's very freaky in many ways.
Oh, I do too. I do too. Yeah, it's almost like a Neo in the pod in that film, The Matrix, right? Just like everyone
Yeah,
plugged into their own perception of reality. Though I suppose that
yeah,
from a metaphysical sense, that there are many philosophers who would argue that that's how we all live anyway, and that maybe that this is just a digital evolution of it. But no, it certainly
yeah.
scares me, and like you, I don't know what to trust anymore, other than, you know, I think you sort of have a trust rating. It's like, okay, I know Adnan personally. If he tells me something is true, I'm inclined to believe it. Whereas, okay, Piers Morgan, I don't know him personally. I know he used to work at the News of the World. And maybe I'm a little bit less inclined to trust what he says is true.
Yeah. Yeah. So should we do some of these like really fun videos and things we can look at that can be,
Yeah, that'd be
just fun in
fantastic.
terms
That'd
of,
be fantastic.
yeah, just breaking down into, like all these crazy satire stories. You had one. Do you want to bring that up?
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, this is about what life was like in the Soviet Union for Joseph Stalin, and you might be a bit too young to remember, but these images were really popular in the West to show just how corrupt the Soviet Union was, because they engaged in early photo manipulation. When you mentioned that you'd like to go through some of that stuff on the show today, that was the first image that occurred to me. So let me bring that up, chap. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a side by side of of Joseph Stalin with Nikolai Yezhov, who he was the chief of the NKVD, but he annoyed the party somehow. So he got 86th, I think, to a Siberian labor camp, or they killed him. Who knows? Anyway, he was out of the picture. So this is an example of early Soviet airbrushing this man from history, and I think this is actually where the term airbrushing comes from, because you sort of think like what the state of cinematography worldwide in the 1930s was pretty primitive, and it was particularly primitive in Eastern Bloc countries. But as it goes, like, this is pretty convincing for a 1930s audience. But there's a whole bunch of these, and I think the ones that were the one that I really liked was this sequence of four. And I might just take myself out of the picture so that you can get a better picture of it. If I can just take myself out, here we go, like that. So you can see this is the evolution of Joseph Stalin with his assistants. And in the first one, the first image on the top left is him with three of his assistants, and one by one they dropped off and were airbrushed out of the photographs as they lost favor and ended up in the gulags in Siberia. So then he went from having three to, in the top image on the right, to having two, to having just one, to finally Stalin has no more assistants. And this series of photographs appeared in Russian news agencies like Pravda, the very famous Soviet, now Russian news organization, and TASS. These were photographs that were legitimately printed in mass media over the years as it evolved. And this is the truth of how the media around the world has pretty much always operated.
Wow, that's very funny, actually. It's just like, oh, I just killed this guy. Can you go Photoshop that photo, please, and then reframe it for me, please?
Yeah. Well, it's and it is quite Orwellian, because even I don't know how contemporaneous it was, but Orwell in 1984, the protagonist in that, the lead character is the character Winston Smith, and that was his job, was to go and rewrite articles in the Times newspaper and do things like that, like unperson people, and that was in the story of the narrative of 1984. Was the actuality in the Soviet Union, where people got unpersoned. But this is, I mean, it's a particular example from back then that we used to parody in the West, to say, look how awful the communists are because they manipulate the media in this manner. But in point of fact, our media is just as bad, and if anything, these days has surpassed them for being particularly egregious for that type of manipulation.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I got one to share with you.
Cool.
I mean, I've got a few, actually. I'll just share my screen. See, entire screen. This is the images of influencers standing outside the White House and holding the much
Right.
highly anticipated Epstein files, if you can see that. Um, there is libs of TikTok, the girl in the white dress. She's the famous account holder of libs of TikTok on TikTok and on X with millions and millions of followers. An account that Elon has pushed a lot. Um, and this obviously is connected to the campaign promise from Trump that if he gets in, he's going to release the Epstein file. And then Pam Bondi, who becomes the attorney general, says, I have thousands and hundreds and thousands of these documents on my desk and we're going to release it. And they do this whole show and tell, and turns out there's nothing in these files. It's just a photo op, right? And they thought that they'll get away with this. And it just, smacks back Trump on his face and it just all explodes. And it's just been the drama for this whole year. And it turns out that much of the files were released by the Congress, and it looks like in those files the real reason as to why Trump did not want to release it, because a lot of these guys that are supporters of Trump are actually named in it and they're implicated somehow in it. It's not necessarily people who may have had sex with underage girls on Epstein Island, but these are people who have met with Epstein or have had meetings with them. Or Epstein was very, very good with tax law, so a lot of people will meet him because they had they were morally flawed and they were all interested in how can I make more money, how can I pay less taxes, how can I structure my taxes. So they would go and meet with Epstein. Peter Thiel was on Joe Rogan saying, yep, I was introduced to him, I knew of his 2008 charges, I met him in 2016, but I had a mentally flawed mindset that I wanted to talk to him about money, right? He's admitting it. So there's a lot of people like that I think are going to be exposed. And I thought this was quite a big moment this year in terms of the power of journalism and how the story was planted and then how it exploded in everyone's face.
Well, that wasn't it great that it did. It's because it was theatre, right? Like they just got all of these influencers to hold up these effectively empty dossiers full of just no information, and it was almost like an Adern press conference, right? Like huge on announcement and
Yeah.
really really shallow on actual delivery. But once upon a time, you could get away with that. And certainly in the New Zealand context, Ardern did regularly. She would announce something and there would be no follow through, and all of the media cheerleaders would simply never follow up and say, well, hang on a second, you said you would do X, Y, and Z and you've done none of it. Well, good on the American media, because in this instance, and some of those influencers saying, hey, we were just used as a photo op, that this was all theatre, all presentation, and no actuality. And perhaps, what do you think? I think that this particular instance may have actually led to the eventual release of the Epstein files in their
Yeah,
totality.
it did. Yeah, it did. This is the power of journalism in its finest. I think it's like this is the similar stuff to what you revealed in Albert Park, right? With your videos, and when you watch those videos, you're like, nothing about this is peaceful protesting. Punching woman in the face is not a peaceful protest, right? And now I think we're gonna see all these Epstein files, and I feel like it's gonna cause a lot of trouble. I feel like everyone's panicking. Michael Burry has just put almost $1 billion short on Palantir stock, on AI. He's the guy who stocked the housing collapse in 2008 financial crisis. He's played by Christian Bale in that famous movie Big Short. So I feel like something is coming. I feel like a lot of people are going to be resigning. There's already a few people resigned. And the co-founder of LinkedIn, I think he's very much in big trouble. I believe FBI is investigating all his 38 or so flights that he's taken to the Epstein Island. Reid Hoffman, I believe his name is. So I think this is going to be a big one. Hopefully, the phase two is not empty as this.
Well, you can hope because it's I think it really is the case that for a lot of these people, these sort of uber wealthy elites, they believe that they can act with impunity and that their money insulates them from the rules of man that all the rest of us have to abide by. And I think there are influence networks there. I think it's fair to say that the influence networks that are so influential, they've influenced Donald Trump as president of the United States, and led to some decisions that are probably regrettable when it comes to the release of these documents. So I think it would be a wonderful thing if the people who are actually culpable in this instance are held to account. I mean, I think that that is true across the board, and we see too much of certain people being able to evade the law. And it's right and proper when they have sinned that they're held to account for it.
Yeah. Moving on to the next story. This is the Trump edit of his speech that BBC edited
Oh,
to
good
make it
one,
look
Adnan.
like, yeah, to make it look like he was the one inciting all the January 6th violence outside Capitol Hill. And this has obviously ended up, Trump not winning in 2020, and he's coming back in the office, and now he's suing the BBC for, I believe, 1 billion or 7 billion. I've heard those two numbers. BBC is apparently not biting to that story, and they're like, "Oh, we've apologized. That's maybe it's like maybe you're probably going to cost you more than just an apology on this one. But this is very interesting. What they've done in this clip is that I'll play it in a minute. Is they've you talked about editing, right? Like removing R's and your stutters and things like that. This editing is where manipulation comes into play. Is they're putting together two pieces that are 40 minutes apart together to make it look like he is the one inciting. Let me play it, see if you can hear it. Let me know if you can hear it. I'm going to stop that because then we're going to get into copyright troubles.
Right. No, I couldn't hear it, but I could see the text on screen. And what
Okay.
really shocked me about this was how the BBC and their fellow travellers on the far left, everyone from the Labour Party politicians in the UK through to the media apparatchiks in equally biased newsrooms inside the United Kingdom, such as the Guardian newspaper and the Independent, tried to defend this. This was absolutely indefensible. As you say, they ran together two sentences that Donald Trump spoke, something like 40 to 50 minutes apart. He spoke those sentences, but the BBC ran them together like it was one sentence to make it appear that he said something that he absolutely did not. Now, the defense that the far left has been running for this is that it captured the essence of what he meant to say. This is just telling the narrative in a different way, and then it didn't materially impact the message that Trump was trying to state. Now, of course, to any reasonable observer, that is just an absolute fabrication. But this is the world that the media lives in. They honestly believe that they can do this, and that it is defensible, and that it is it falls within journalistic integrity to manipulate content to this degree.
Yeah, it is just fascinating, isn't it? And I think we've seen a lot of this stuff happening this year. For some reason, it's coming to light that the manipulation of these kind of videos and the fake news, they're doing it on the open now. It's like it's just business as usual. It's like we don't care if you call us out anymore. We'll just do it.
Yeah, but there's enough people that will believe it, and you
Yeah.
get this right. Like you ask an American today if they found weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and it's something like 43% of Americans believe that they did. 20 years later, it's an absolutely established fact that there were no weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq. But because the media continues to tell Americans that is true, they still believe it. So it is actually worthwhile for the media looking to manipulate the audience to keep lying, because eventually they will, people will believe them, and particularly the people that are inside those information bubbles. A good example
Yeah.
of that was just one today. I don't know if you saw that the New Zealand Herald, NZME, have a new podcast called The Elephant in the Room.
Okay.
Okay, and they had Nathan Siueli from Pillar, debating against some mental trans activist dude in the studio. Now it was well worth watching, because Nathan's a very, very smart man, and he wiped the floor with this demented trans rights activist. But they also, as part of that clip, they had a sob story from a trans identified male who was part of the mob who attacked Posey Parker. Now, during this segment, the Elephant in the Room on NZME that was published earlier today, they had this woe is me story from the trans identified male, saying how he had had his hair pulled and rude words said to him when he attacked Posey Parker's event. What the NZME media didn't do was say, okay, well, if that happened, he tore down barriers and was part of a mob that attacked women and elderly people. He tore down barriers to get there and is now complaining like he was the victim, when he absolutely
Yeah.
was not. He was part of the perpetrators. Now, this is what you get all of the time from the far left media, particularly here in New Zealand, where they will keep telling you that this was a peaceful demonstration. It doesn't matter how much, how many hundreds of millions of people watch the footage that I released of that event. Here we are, 2.5, nearly 3 years later, and NZME is still pushing that narrative on behalf
Yeah.
of Jacinda Ardern and on behalf of Chloe Swarbrick.
Yeah, because they do that because gatekeeping is more. They believe they are the gatekeepers of news and information and truth telling, and it is okay to lie occasionally and regularly, but it's very important that they are the gatekeepers, right? It's like, no, you get to be a gatekeeper if you're a truth teller. People should come to you and listen to you if you tell the truth, and you shouldn't be getting any of our money, taxpayer money, to be a fake gatekeeper and keep feeding people just lies like they all do. BBC, The Guardian, CNN, they all do. I think the next one I want to move on to is obviously the two wars we've had this year, Gaza and Israel, the Middle East war, and then Russia um, and Ukraine. And one of the things I've found this year is that the amount of misinformation of what's actually happened in these what's happening in these wars. Let's look at the Gaza, for example, whether it's a genocide, not a genocide, how much of it has been destructed. We're looking at some images here of satellite images of Gaza, and how much of it has been bombed and not bombed. I think this has been one of the most difficult one to try and get the truth out in terms of what's really happened since October 2023, with Israel's retaliation of Hamas attacking them and killing 1,200 of their people.
I think you're right, and I haven't been paying an awful lot of attention to it, simply because I find the horror of warfare really rather distressing in general, but in particular when it comes to issues in the Holy Land. You just have so much vested interest on both sides on narrative control. As you say, it's almost impossible to be able to
Yeah.
determine what is fact and what is fiction in that conflict.
Yeah, I found some very interesting facts on Google AI. I think the AI is called Gemini, I believe, and it says that about 2/3 of all buildings in the Gaza Strip have been damaged or destroyed. There's about 163,000 structures that have been damaged. That's about 66% of all buildings, and more than 90% of homes and 92% of all residential buildings have been damaged or destroyed. I mean, that's quite a high number, isn't it? And look at this one. Nearly 89% of water and sanitation infrastructure is damaged or destroyed. Most of the healthcare system has collapsed, with over 80% of health facilities damaged and 34 hospitals out of service. 92% of schools and 63 university buildings have been damaged or destroyed. Nearly 70% of roads, approximately 70% of agricultural land and crops have been damaged or destroyed. I mean that's pretty much everything, and we're talking about 2 million people living at Gaza Strip, right? I mean, that's a very like an if that's true, that's pretty like crazy in terms of what's happened to the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, well, we're talking about a civilian population there, right? And if that is true, that's certainly looking like a collective punishment type deal.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely looks like it. Yeah, it's very awful, and that's why I think a lot of people are pissed off at the Israeli government, not at the Jews. We're criticizing a democratic sovereign state that reports to the United Nations, right? Like everybody else does, and everybody has to abide by human rights. This definitely, you have to question this in some way or the other. And but this is again very interesting in terms of how this information they one of the things that Israel has done is not allow journalists to go through, and then you also have seen these fake journalists from Gaza that would put out videos about they'll do all these films about fake dead bodies. And have you seen those videos?
I have, yes, and there's like I've seen one chap who keeps appearing in videos wearing different costumes and those sorts of things, and that's yeah, it's as you say, there's an awful lot of propaganda, and a lot of it is transparently propaganda.
Yeah, yeah. This I'm moving on to this next one. This is the Syrian new president of Syria, and he's
Yeah,
over
how
here
about
at the
this,
White
man?
House. Yeah, he's at the White House. What do you make of this?
I just think it's crazy, right? Like, I mean, this guy is an ISIS head chopper, and the whole world
Yeah,
is pretending like that is not who he is. This guy
yeah,
is just a monster, and yet he's he's the president of Syria and being feted by the great and the good of the international community. Everyone
yeah,
goes on about what a bad person Bashar al-Assad was,
yeah,
being a Ba'athist. Well, I got to tell you, I
yeah,
think being a Ba'athist, which is pretty much it's an Arab political ideology, which is much more sort of sectarian, is probably a better thing than being a hardcore Islamist, as this guy is. The other thing is about Bashar al-Assad is that people don't know is that when he became president of Syria, he was working as an ophthalmologist in a London hospital, right? Like
yeah,
his father and his brother got killed, and he was the second son. They were killed, I think, in a car bomb or something like that. He became president, left his job as an ophthalmologist in a London hospital. Now, that is a lot more of a kind of a reasonable sort of a middle of the road type despot that you can do business with, compared to a guy who likes to chop people's heads off because they happen to be Yazidi.
yeah, yeah. I mean, here is a 2017 story of the Syrian president today. U.S. offers $10 million reward for information on al-Nusra leader, right? So at some point in the CIA books, the guy who is right now, who was recently in the White House shaking hands with Trump, was actually a CIA. It was on the bounty hit list for the CIA, and they were offering $10 million to get him. And here he is now. It's all fine. And you're right, Bashar. I think the thing over there is that he did not play along with the American and the Western allies, because they were the one causing a lot of trouble in Syria, and he was friends with Russia, right? And that's where this looks like a bit of a psyop, that this guy will do whatever they need to do. They obviously are a neighbor to the Israeli regime, which is very much allies with the Western world and the U.S. So I think this is more like, yeah, this guy's gonna do what we tell him to do type deal.
Yeah, well, it never pays to disobey what the Americans want. Like, as Saddam Hussein, who was their boy in that part of the world for a very, very long time, found out to his demise. That's just kind of what happens. But from the perspective of the three-letter agencies, of the NSA, of the CIA, and so on, this is actually a little bit like returning to business as usual. So here we have a guy who was, as you say, he was a leader of the Al-Nusra Front, which is part of what became ISIS, I think. I'm not quite sure of how the factionality works inside those Islamist organizations, but they are, Islamist. I'm old enough, Adnan, to remember when ISIS was called Al Qaeda, and before that, I'm old enough to remember when Al Qaeda was called the Mujahideen and were being
Yeah,
financed by the CIA in Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet invasion in 1979. So it's all the
correct.
same ideology, and it's just, from one day to the next. Sometimes these guys are our friends, sometimes they're our mortal enemies, and the narrative that is portrayed by the establishment and amplified by the media just goes along with that. So a guy like this,
Yeah.
10 years ago, he's the worst person in the world. And there's a $10 million bounty on his head. Today, he's meeting Donald Trump at the White House, because that's how the shifting sands of international politics works.
Yeah, and I think the other way to look at this is the Western allies, with America leading the way, won the World War II, so they get to dictate the world rulings, and they have the discretion to say this thing was not right 10 years ago, and now it's right because we can make it right, you know? And it seems the world operates that way. If Hitler won the World War II, you and I will be speaking German right now, you know, and we're doing the Hitler salute. But that's kind of like, how it goes. So these guys they rule the world and they hold the power, and they can wake up one morning and decide, well, now this is the new rules of engagement. This is the truth, and we get to decide what the rules are, and that's how it goes.
I think you're right, but I think that world is changing. It used to be the case that, particularly with the end of the Soviet Union in 1989, 1990, that the Americans had full spectrum dominance, and you did have European and North American dominated international institutions, everything from the United Nations to the International Criminal Court to the World Bank to the International Monetary Fund, maintaining this kind of Eurocentric approach to international affairs. But I don't think that is going to maintain. And look at what's happening now with the rise of the BRICS, with China, Russia, India, to a lesser extent Brazil, and all of those non-aligned countries. They are, to a large degree, really going their own way. And a good example of that is that there's a lot of international condemnation and pressure upon Modi in India not to be buying, let alone reselling, Russian energy supplies such as oil. But India continues to do that anyway. Now, simply 15 or 20 years ago, if the American government said to India, stop buying Russian oil, they simply would have stopped buying Russian oil, because the Americans were so dominant, and by extension NATO and the Western allies were so dominant, that there was simply no other choice. Well, nowadays things are starting to change. We are becoming more multipolar, and so a country like India can kind of thumb their nose a little bit and say, you know what, it's actually in our economic interest to keep buying Russian oil. So screw you, Washington, screw you, Brussels. We're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it? And BRICS is the another one. They're trying to create this currency that will counter the US dollar. It's called BRICS, and I think South Africa was the one that kind of started the idea. But you have Iran on it, Russia on it, China on it, lots of other little countries as well. And that's kind of countering the whole SWIFT payment thing. When Russia got cut off from the SWIFT payments, which kind of shut them down into, with a lot of things, the internet, social media, all the food and the supplies and all sorts of stuff. So if you counter that kind of attacks with something like a currency that you operate with other countries, then the damage is very minimal. You can just carry on. But Russia was quite amazing in terms of how quickly it picked up and got running again. They just created replicas of McDonald's and supermarket and Coke and Coca-Cola. It's quite fascinating how they did that. It's very,
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very satirically funny. Tucker Carlson went into this fake McDonald's, and he basically did a demo of the burger, and when he was there to interview Putin, and it's essentially just McDonald's, and they just changed the branding of it. It's a very sci-fi drama shit. It's very funny. Okay, moving on to the next one. This is something I guess very disturbing, but you can see through these satellite images a lot of like big splashes of red color on the sand. You can see them in these images. You can see them in this one over here as well. And these apparently look like, in Sudan, there's obviously a big, there's a lot of civil war going on and lots of people are being killed. But this is quite freaky to see these like very big blood stains. Looks like groups of people have been murdered in these villages in Sudan.
Okay, I hadn't seen this. That's just absolutely terrible. I hope that that's not what it is.
Yeah, yeah, who knows? I mean, here's the video, and this is put up by NBC News. Images of Sudan taken from space shows stains resembling blood, researchers say. Are consistent. Analysts believe tens of thousands have been killed. I lost that. Let's move to the next image. Are consistent to the size of human bodies. Yeah, this is pretty awful, isn't it? When you see these kind of images.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely awful.
Yeah, and it's crazy that we have to go to satellite images to find the truth than actually being reported in the news. Yeah.
Is there any corroboration besides these images?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it much. It kind of popped up and I was like, oh, that's a freaky one to look at. Moving on to something lighter.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, yeah. That was pretty dark, wasn't it? It's pretty awful. The sombreros and the memes. Sam Harris was on the Trigonometry podcast saying, the White House have, caused a lot of issues with posting memes and trolls on their social media accounts and just dunking on these Democrats. These sombreros came out when the Democrats shut down the government for 45 days and they wanted health funding for all the illegal immigrants. So Trump was trolling them with all these like sombreros, and it really kind of broke the internet that day. There were some really funny videos. This is a good one. Again, AI generated images.
Yeah, they're pretty funny. They're pretty funny. I like that the White House is engaged in this kind
Yeah,
of
Trump
political
is doing a
parody.
lot of that as well. Yeah, the whole meme thing. It's crazy how the memes are so powerful today, isn't it?
Well, they are, and it's for the great thing is that because as the saying goes, the left can't meme, and they can't, right? And it's when people meme, it often shows a truth that that the leftists in particular would rather not be exposed.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean that's I think one of the big highlights of 2025 is just the whole meme culture. And meme accounts have been huge on X. There's a lot of them, and it's just people said every day just make memes, and that's like their full time gig. And there's Trump posting them. This
which is
AI
amazing.
videos.
It's amazing.
It's amazing how much, like the government accounts are just constant memes and trolls, and it's really, really funny. Have you been paying much attention to Three Eye Atlas?
I haven't. I've seen some of the like the conjecture around it. It's like, okay, this is, this is an asteroid, and people think it might be an alien ship. So there's been a whole bunch of, you know, artificial creations around those sorts of themes. But I'm not very informed
Yeah.
of the detail.
Yeah, I guess no one knows what it is, right? We can only look at it and speculate. There's all lots of scientists, they study it and they come up with ideas. There's guys on Joe Rogan trying to break it down. My latest theory that I really love, again, could be satire, is that this is a human virus created by humans, shot into the space to make it look like it's a fake alien invasion, and it's going to come back and cause some kind of world disruption for somebody to gain from it.
That sounds like the plot of Pluribus.
It does. It does sound like the plot of Pluribus. But that was I read that this morning. I was like, oh, that's actually a really good one. I can buy into that. You know, it's just like Joe Rogan now believes that we never went to the moon, and he'll spend 3 hours looking at all the images and the shadows of the images and the flags and the yeah. It's very interesting how these things can come to become the reality that we perceive it to be. But wouldn't it be cool if it was like a alien ship showing up, going, "What the fuck are you guys up to?
Yeah, yeah,
What are you
yeah.
guys doing?"
That would be fantastic. That would be
That
fantastic
will
because
be.
that would be
That
their
will be.
reactions to be like, "What the hell are you people doing?"
Yeah. The other one I remember just quickly was the Tesla protests. You remember those?
I do. Yeah, they were getting crazy.
They were. I mean, you are the master of filming in protests, and and this was crazy. The fact that Elon was supporting Trump, people were boycotting Tesla. They were like
Vandalizing them on the
burning,
streets. Yep.
vandalizing. It was insane. And there were these stickers that I have seen behind Tesla. It's like, I bought this Tesla before Elon went crazy. Here you can see all these like Teslas on fire outside a showroom. These are all the chargers that are on fire. They've burned a lot of Tesla just because they didn't like Elon, supporting Trump. And
Well,
this, I
it's
believe, is all organized by the Antifa, which is Trump has just called as a terrorist organization.
which is great. But it just goes to show you, firstly, how violent the left is, but secondly, how malleable they are. Like your average leftist is just an NPC. They don't do any thinking for themselves. They allow other people to do their thinking for them. So when an organization like Antifa says, okay, George Floyd died, burn down your city, all of the leftist NPCs go and do that. Similarly, Antifa says, okay, we don't like that Elon Musk supports Donald Trump and he is running a free speech platform, so go and burn down car dealerships that sell his vehicles. And if you see someone driving one of his vehicles, they are a traitor, so you need to vandalize their vehicle, and if you can, assault that person. And we see this across everything that the leftists care about. We see violent protests from people who are stupid, whether it's climate, whether it's trans rights, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it's Black Lives Matter. It's the same barely even human leftists who have just been given a target by their controllers and let loose to commit acts of wanton destruction and violence.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane. I mean, we've protests, I believe, are not. I think these guys who do protest have been very smart in convincing people that protests are peaceful things. They're not peaceful things. They are for organizing war. They are for organizing violence. So it feels like we need to break that reality. We need to break that down and get it to the truth and look at the history of protesting, right? We see it happen outside Winston's house. I mean, what of any of that was peaceful in any way? If you just read the messages that they wrote on the street outside Winston Peters' home, none of that sounds to me anything to do with peaceful. Like you're screaming at a house where there's an elderly woman in there with a dog. How is that anything to do with peaceful? I mean, that's just a cowardly thing to do, to go stand outside someone's house and yell at them because you think that's gonna fix the issues in Gaza. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
what's the connection there? Yeah.
yeah. What is the connection? Absolutely. And this has been fun.
It has. It's always fantastic to speak with you, and it'd be great to get you to come on Simon TV sometime when you've
Yeah,
got
man,
time.
I'd love to do it.
Yeah,
Was
it'd
I?
be
Did I
fantastic.
ever been a guest on your show?
You haven't, and I have
Ah,
asked you a couple of times, but for one reason or another, we've struggled to get our schedules coordinated. But look,
yeah,
why don't we arrange a time? I'm particularly keen to get you on because I'm sure there's a lot of crossover between your audience and mine, but I'd
yeah.
particularly like to introduce those who aren't aware of your stuff to be following some of your satire, and particularly when it comes to your perspective on things, international affairs to do with the Gulf and the Middle East. I think that yours is a voice that ought to be heard more.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to come on. I mean, I do engage on the comments when I'm listening to the Simon TV. I'm always in the comments getting involved. So I'd love to come on, man, and let's make it happen.
Fantastic. All right. Okay. Well, I'll email you during the week, and we'll
Yeah.
set a date and a time. Fantastic. That'd be great.
Te- Tell everyone where they can watch Simon TV and what your user accounts are. Is it on YouTube? Is it just on Twitter?
Okay, well, it's absolutely everywhere. You can find it typically under my own name, which is Simon R. Anderson. My social media accounts are normally Simon R. Anderson, but that's on X, YouTube, Rumble, Substack, Twitch. Yeah, pretty much all of the major platforms. But if you just put in Simon TV to a search engine, you'll see that it comes up with my main site, simontv.org, which is where you can find broadcast links on your platform of choice or tune in directly across the web.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Well, thanks a lot for coming on.
Well, thank you for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure, Adnan.
So much fun. Bye, everyone.